Our 6.9, consideration of workshop on a potential community facilities district for the Guenoc mixed-use project, administrative office. Ben Wrkp, I see you sitting in the chair, so go ahead and I'll give the floor to you.
Good afternoon, Board. Ben Wrkp, Deputy County Administrative Officer. I'm here for a workshop session regarding community facility districts, particularly in regard to the Guenoc mixed-use development. We have a team here, the Guenoc development team led by Kevin Case. We have Bound Counsel here, consultants, and then also James Hamill, who's a director with the Joint Power Authority, California Statewide Communities Development Authority. So I'll lead it off with Lou Feldman, consultant with the project that will help orchestrate the presentation and bring the various parties in to give an overview of what CFDs are, community facility districts, and how it could apply to this project.
That's great. Much better. Honorable Supervisors, my name is Lou Feldman, and I have been in public finance for 45 years in California. It's my pleasure to address you and give you information with respect to how we would like your help in financing the infrastructure that will bring the Guenoc Valley mixed-use project to fruition. We've put a lot of work into today, and the idea isn't just to inundate you with a bunch of information, it's to actually have you ask questions, get clarification, and then understand what we're doing. We're trying to be, thank you. We're trying to be as transparent as we can, and some of this may make your eyes glaze over, but we've tried to condense it so that doesn't happen. We're going to give a brief overview of the development status, and Kevin Case will do that. Then we're going to introduce community facilities districts, the legal aspects of it. Brian Forbath, who's with Stradling, who's here, is the bond counsel, and he'll explain that. We'll talk also about the financial, legal, and administrative framework, how much local government is burdened with administrative tasks and how we've tried to make it so that this is a non-recourse, no liability, taking everything and putting it in the hands of CSCDA, California Statewide, and James Hamill's group, along with the bond counsel, to administer this in a way that is painless for you and seamless and brings economic development and jobs without burdening the general fund. James Hamill, who is with CSCDA, as Mr. Wrkp mentioned, is here, and he will talk about how CSCDA can issue these bonds on your behalf. So each presenter will give you their area of expertise, and we'll be here for questions. We'll go to the next slide, and that's going to be explaining what our agenda is. I just did that. And then the next slide, please. Introduces all of the people who will be on the team, including James Hamill, Todd Smith, who's the bond underwriter who would purchase the bonds and sell those bonds in the retail market or to an institution. Brian Forbath, I mentioned. One person who's not here today is Susan Goodwin. Susan is the person who puts together the tax formula and does the administration as a third-party consultant. And she's a wonderful person, but she couldn't be here today. And then finally, we will choose an independent trustee, a bank that will represent the parties to the bond issue and make sure that everything really goes through an escrow, all conditions are met, and everybody walks away happy. And we end up with money, you end up with infrastructure from that money, and we all end up with 2,886 jobs. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide and introduce Kevin Case, who is going to talk about where we are on the development process.
Good afternoon, Board. Good to see you again. It's been a little while. I wanted to just bring you guys up to speed. We are advancing on the project, and I think that's what everybody wants to hear. We definitely want to hear that. And I saw Mr. Rasmussen there at 2 in the lobby, and he said, are we still starting construction next year? And I said, we absolutely are. So we've been working with Maria Turner, saw her back there, as well, to get our subdivision maps and all that in. So that'll all be coming in here before too long. So we're working diligently, as we all know, working through CEQA and MMRPs, mitigation measures, and permitting and so forth is where we're really have our team right now hyper-focused on that, as well as our civil design. So again, our goal is to break construction in April. This is one element of our capital stack of part of our financing for the project. Obviously, it's not our only source of it, but this will help us for the development of some of the infrastructure, of some of the roads and some of the utilities and so forth, the things that we don't see, but cost a lot of money. So anyway, we're, again, very excited. We really appreciate your support. It's going to be a lot of questions and answers. I've been working with Lou and his team now. We started this process, I think, in 2020 when we were teed up, ready to go before. And even after 5 years, talking about your eyes glazing over, still a lot of this stuff doesn't even make sense to me. So it's pretty heavy duty. But again, today is really about question and answers. What the county, want obviously the county and particularly you as the Board of Supervisors to be obviously comfortable with how we're moving forward and with the team. Lou, like I said, we met about 5 years ago and came highly recommended, and he's really put together, I think, for the state of California, really a rock star team. I think really best of class when it comes to covering this. And we appreciate, again, the opportunity. We did meet, was 2 months ago, I believe, with some of the staff and just to help them kind of Q&A as well and answer some of their questions about the bond financing. So I'm not going to take your time. I'm not an expert on this subject, so I'm going to sit down and be quiet. But thank you again for your time.
Ben, go to the next slide. Thanks. Good afternoon, Board. Brian Forbath from Stradlin Yacht Carlson Routh. Pleasure to be here this afternoon with you. So my role is to serve as bond counsel to the transaction. So as bond counsel, I represent CSCDA in the transaction, and we render all the legal opinions that are necessary for bonds to be issued and sold out into the public to the investors. So my job is sort of to oversee the legal proceedings to make sure that everything's put together correctly and complies with law. And then there's also certain other aspects that we'll talk about as we get in the presentation. There's one of the big benefits for bonds, some of these municipal bonds, is that they can be issued on a tax-exempt basis as long as certain requirements are met. And so my firm works together to make sure that those requirements are met so that bonds that are issued are ultimately tax-exempt. In other words, that if you buy a bond, the interest that you receive on that, you don't have to pay federal income taxes on. And that's important because that means the bonds could be issued at a lower interest rate to investors because they don't have to pay taxes on it. So it's an important aspect of what we do and our role in the transaction. So I'm not sure how familiar you all are with the board with the Community Facilities Districts, or Mello-Roos. But Mello-Roos was essentially founded back in the early 80s after Proposition 13 came into place and sort of really restricted the way that public agencies could fund public infrastructure. So Mello-Roos became a tool that would allow either public agencies or developers working with public agencies to finance public infrastructure to benefit new development or existing development, actually, too. And it's really a way that allows an amortization of upfront costs. In other words, we've got a project that's going to cost $50 million today to build this, and it's going to serve a community for 50 or 60 years, or 30 years at least. How do we sort of amortize that cost generationally amongst the residents who are going to benefit from it? And that's what Mello-Roos serves a very important role in that aspect of it. Another key aspect of Mello-Roos, in addition to financing public infrastructure, is the ability to finance ongoing services, which includes the maintenance of that public infrastructure as things age and degenerate, that there's special taxes that can be available to sort of repair, maintain that infrastructure, to pay for the removal of debris from drainage basins, to fix stormwater drains, et cetera. That's all able to be financed through Mello-Roos. You want to go to the next slide for me, Ben? So what is a community facilities district or a CFD? A CFD is a legally distinct public entity that's established underneath the Melrose Act, and it's designed to provide infrastructure and services without burdening the agency that forms it. In other words, it's a non-recourse liability of the public agency that forms the CFD. The public agency establishes a CFD as a distinct entity with specific geographic boundaries and authorized for purposes of infrastructure development. Eventually, CFDs will issue bonds, and those CFD bonds are payable solely from annual special taxes that are levied on taxable property within the district. And we're going to talk about, I got another whole slide that talks about special taxes and how those are levied, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But special taxes that are levied on the property are collected on a property tax bill. They show up and you're going to pay them just like all your other property taxes that are due in December and April, and pay them when they're due. In order for a CFD to be formed, it requires a vote of either the registered voters or the landowners that live within the boundaries of the CFD. I'll just stop. If anybody has a question along the way, please feel free to stop
Please
me.
continue.
Yeah. And so the CFD special taxes have to be voter approved by 2/3 vote of either the landowners or the registered voters within the district, depending on who lives there. And again, there's no financial liability. The bonds that are issued are secured by and payable solely from special taxes on the property. And if the special taxes don't pay, then there's a covenant to foreclose on that property to recoup the special taxes that are not paid.
I have a question.
Sure.
So you're talking about the taxes, is that levied on the property actually within the Guenoc project, not
Correct.
without?
Just within
Not
the Guenoc
outside.
property, yes.
Okay.
So we would draw a specific boundary around either all of the property or portions of the property, and there'd be a tax that would levy on just that property within the boundaries of the CFD.
But not,
Not anywhere else in Lake
Okay.
County, yeah.
thank you.
Okay. We go to the next slide, Ben, thanks. So why use Melrose? Again, it's a mechanism to finance public infrastructure. It provides a lot of flexibility, and as Kevin mentioned, for a lot of developers, it's an important aspect of the capital stack. It's just a piece of the puzzle in terms of how they pay for and finance infrastructure. It also allows a significant amount of upfront funding that might not otherwise be available because bonds can be issued relatively early in the development cycle. And maybe in amounts that might not be able to be achieved or a much higher cost through private financing. It also provides a lot of flexibility in terms of, unlike an assessment district, I don't know how familiar you are with assessment districts, but assessment districts, you can only levy an assessment for the special benefit that a property receives from the improvements that are to be constructed. And so it's a constitutional test. And so it's stringent because an assessment only requires a 50+1 vote, whereas a Melrose special tax requires a 2/3 vote. Because it's a special tax, it doesn't require that the properties within the district receive a special benefit. They just have to benefit from the improvements on a reasonable basis. And so it provides a lot of flexibility in terms of what improvements can be constructed and how they're paid for and how the CFD is ultimately established and set up. We go to the next slide. So what can a CFD fund and finance? I mean, mostly CFDs are finance backbone public infrastructure. They finance roads, water, sewer, drainage, parks. Those are the public facilities that CFDs are mainly used to finance. In addition, CFDs levy special taxes to pay for the costs of administering and operating the CFD. Administrative costs are also part of a key component of what the special taxes are levied. And then again, in order to finance the improvements, these are all public improvements. All of these improvements must be owned by another governmental entity, whether it's the county, if there's a water improvements by a water district or a sanitary district, they're owned by a public agency. Or if there's school facilities to be financed, they need to be owned by the school district. Next slide. So a CFD has what we call a special tax formula or a rate and method of apportionment. And that is the methodology pursuant to which that properties get taxed underneath the CFD to pay for debt service on the bonds and pay for the public infrastructure. It's the rate and method provides a mechanism for the annual levy of the special taxes to satisfy what we will call a special tax requirement. And that special tax requirement is established each year to determine, okay, what do I need to levy to pay debt service on the bonds? That's one component of it. What do I need to levy each year to pay for the administration of the CFD? That's another component. And then are there other facilities that we're just going to levy special taxes for directly to pay for the cost of those public facilities or services that are to be provided by the CFD? But what's really important is the CFD establishes, the rate method, establishes a maximum tax that has to be disclosed to future property owners, that this is the maximum amount of tax that you can ever be levied on in any year. That tax can escalate up to 2% a year for facilities, or it can escalate more than that for services. But those taxes are statutorily required to be disclosed to property owners when they purchase their homes. I'm going to go to the next slide. So just some other considerations about a special tax formula and how they work. It's important to know that a special tax underneath the Melrose cannot be ad valorem based. So it cannot be based on the value of your home. It doesn't fluctuate based on the value of your home. And so a lot of times special taxes are based on square footage, where certain square footage or lot size, where the bigger the house, the higher the tax, the larger the lot, the higher the tax, et cetera, is part of how it gets established. But it's also really important that the special tax is developed in a manner that ensures that there's always sufficient taxes available to pay debt service on bonds that are outstanding, that are sold to third-party investors. Again, I represent CSCDA, I don't represent the developer. And so our goal and what we will work for with James Hamill and Susan Goodwin is to make sure that we've got a special tax formula that sort of is bulletproof, that essentially there's always going to be sufficient taxes available to pay debt service on the bonds, assuming that development is there. Again, as I mentioned previously, there's not a special benefit requirement. Instead, the Melrose Law provides a lot greater flexibility in terms of how you can assess folks. So in other words, certain homes that might be in an elevated area with benefit from greater views could be taxed in a different way than other places that don't have those views. That's just for instance, the different tax zones. And again, importantly, a CFD allows the ability to tax developed property and undeveloped property differently. And that's an important concept to know, because again, in terms of risk and reward here, undeveloped property, of course, is riskier than developed property. If you have a developed property with a completed home on it, that property is definitely a lot more likely to pay their taxes in a downturn or whatever, where it's not going to have any development risk associated with it. So this allows the flexibility to tax developed property first, undeveloped property second, so that we can structure a transaction that provides the most security for bond owners. Next slide. So again, just some key components of the rate and method of apportionment. Again, it's voter approved. It establishes a ceiling or a maximum tax on that can be levied each year on property owners. And again, as I mentioned, the tax can escalate for facilities to pay for public infrastructure only up to 2% a year. But if there's a tax to pay for public services, that could be at a higher rate of like CPI or 4%, that would more align with how the cost of providing those services may escalate.
And thank you for reiterating that. If there's something else that you have to reiterate, we can just kind of, move forward.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah. The term of the tax is set forth, and then it also, the collection of the tax is on the county property tax bill. And then I'm going to turn, if there's no questions for me, I will hand this over to James Hamill over at CSCDA to discuss how CSCDA can assist the county in administering, establishing, and forming a CFD on its behalf.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. My name is James Hamill. I'm a managing director with CSCDA, or California Statewide Communities Development Authority. We're a joint powers authority that was founded by CSAC and the League of California Cities back in 1988. You are a member to this authority. You were one of the first members, actually, in 1988. Of the over 530 members that we have of cities and counties on a statewide basis. Throughout California, we issue bonds on behalf of counties and cities, ranging from nonprofits to affordable housing to what we'll talk about today, infrastructure financing. In California, in this area in infrastructure financing, we've issued almost $500 million or $500 million in bonds in this area for 47 projects statewide. What we do on behalf of the county is really assist you in terms of taking the burden of doing these types of CFDs from the county's perspective, but that does not mean that it takes the power away and the decisions away from you as a county. So you are still involved deeply. Your staff is involved. We are doing this on your behalf, so we're not taking any powers away from the county on its own to do. So that's a little background on ourselves. In terms of the process and how you participate with us, as I mentioned, number one, you're already a member, so you don't have to go through that process. But number two is if you were to move forward with this project and wanted CSCDA to issue the bonds and administer the district for this, you as a board would consider and adopt a resolution that authorizes us to form the district, to issue the bonds for the district, and then do the ongoing administrative requirements for the district itself. In terms of those ongoing requirements, a lot of times counties, cities, districts want us to do this and like us to do this because if there are issues with the districts, delinquencies, anything associated with that, we handle that. You don't have to bring your county council or any other outside parties to do that. In addition, on the tax roll, when the special tax is put on, as Brian pointed out, is it has our phone number, our name, so the county is not getting phone calls directly on what is this and why is this on the property tax roll as a whole. So in terms of process, that's how you get in this. I won't go through the credit requirements but in detail, but mainly these are the standard requirements that we have. In the over 600 million that we've issued throughout California, we've never had a default, which is great. And that's because we do have these stringent requirements that are above the state requirements by law to do. So these will be integrated into what you as a board would consider when that resolution came. Go next slide, please, Ben. So I've already touched on this, but in terms of the process, if you go from the top to the bottom, the first step is the request, which would be for us to take this over and issue the bonds here. Then we handle everything going forward. We handle the public hearings. We handle all the formation. We handle the landowner elections. We work with the team, as Brian pointed out, in terms of marketing the bonds, and then the transaction close, and that those funds are made available to the developer and the team. Now, the thing is, again, you are in control of all this. We are just doing the heavy lifting on all this on the front end and the back end. Next slide, please. So basically, this cuts out into what is the county doing, what is the developer doing, and then what are we doing? And I'll probably more focus on the bottom part because the top part I've already talked about. The developer has already talked about what they're doing. But on the bottom, so annually what we will do is we will put this on the tax roll. We will work with your treasurer tax collector to do that. If there are any continuing disclosure requirements, which there are for these, we handle those. If there are lot splits, if there is a foreclosure, which hopefully there is not, we handle that from our end. And then if there is any arbitrage or rebate calculations that are done, we handle that. So essentially, we are a tool here to help in these types of transactions as a whole. Again, not taking away the power and the decisions from the county. Whenever we do these, we work very closely with staff, multiple calls, making sure that as we move forward on this, that you are part of that process. And if anything needs to change or has to change, you can make those changes accordingly. So next. So Lou, I don't know if you want to.
So I know it's a new vocabulary, and that's always fun to learn new things, special tax rates and stuff, but this is really, it's pretty simple. What we're doing is we're putting a voluntary tax on our property, we're collecting it, we're using it for debt service and to maintain the public improvements. All of the improvements that are put in are public improvements, as was mentioned, and they must be done to county standards. This is purely financing. What we're talking about, it has nothing to do with public bidding and other things like that. This is a very complicated project. We're going to talk to the Public Works Director to explain how we're going to do the contracting and get into a lot of detail. James and his company will help us, or his agency will help us, as well as working with the investment banker. The investment banker has to prepare this in a customary fashion to make sure that it's accepted by the market and we get the best rate. The best rate, the more proceeds we want, the lower our rate has to be, because it's just, I think I just won a Ford Pinto. But they have to get together and make sure that it complies with what the market is looking for. And I'm actually going to ask Todd, if you would, Todd Smith from Hilltop, to come up and talk a little bit about the bond market and how he is going to make sure, as another check, that we do a safe and proper transaction for you, so it never ends up in default. I've done a lot of deals. I've done workouts. I've never had a deal of my own go upside down. So that's 45 years, and I don't want it to happen on this one. So we all work together to make sure it doesn't happen. So Todd, why don't you come up and talk a little?
Thank you. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Todd Smith with Hilltop Securities as the underwriter for the proposed bond issuance, or series of bond issues that will be planned for the project. Yeah, I mean, as James had mentioned, there'll be adopted policies for issuance, which includes value to lien ratios, making sure that we have sufficient maximum special taxes to cover debt service, et cetera, that type of thing. But, generally speaking, I mean, there's been, I think this year, on average in California, $1 billion to $1.5 billion of community facilities districts bonds that are underwritten and issued to and sold to the public. A transaction such as this, we would likely be marketing primarily to qualified institutional buyers or investors, and not mom and pop retail, especially for startup type projects. Again, just trying to de-risk the investor side of it as well. Yeah, I mean, really the value to lien ratio is a key component, understanding what the proposed development is, absorption of the project and build out of the project, which is obviously what investors want to know, because they're going to buy effectively dirt bonds that are being taxed with these special taxes. And, what is going to be good for the investor is to see that project actually build out right and get vertical construction value, and which, helps secure making sure that folks are going to pay their taxes, right? I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell, but, just try and manage delinquencies. And again, zero defaults. So we've got a pretty good track record.
All right.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Seeing any?
So in terms of what we're going to ask you to do, which is to study this, get any questions you have to us so we can answer them appropriately. And we would like you to consider adopting a resolution which would formally have CSCDA be the issuer. We're doing this simply to take the administrative burden off of you. In the future, should you decide that you want to form the CFD and you want to be the parties that handle everything, that's something that can be done in the future. But right now, to get it started, the simplest and best way to do it is to have someone who's done it many, many, many times do it for you at no cost to you. And that's really what we're trying to do. So my understanding, and Mr. Rickelman will have to remind me, I think the 9th of December, we'd like to come back and we'd like to have you approve a resolution and that resolution would be to have CSCDA serve as your conduit issuer. That's what they call it. And then we would, as the developer, we would put up a deposit so that all of the professionals and all the people who are working are paid. Again, no questions to the county about paying for anything. You don't pay for anything. And then that process would just unfold. We would have 3 resolutions. Brian can tell you all about that. He prepares them. One is to form the district. One is to have a hearing that the district's going to be formed, then to form the district, and then to issue the bonds, which is a separate resolution after all the documentation has been put together. But on the 9th, we're simply going to ask you to let us burden James and then check in with you along the way to make sure everybody's happy and that you're protected. There is I don't think do we need Jason? I guess we do. We would need a joint community facilities agreement with every body, every public body that's going to accept some of these improvements. So we would work, say, water district gets this, county gets that, and then enter into an agreement as to who's getting what, and making sure that we are providing all of the things that are needed to have them accepted, just like you would an ordinary public improvement. And there will be goals and policies. I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that, but goals and policies as to what qualifies as a viable CFD, the kinds of standards, 4 times, 3 times, debt value of lien, pardon me, all of that's laid out. So those are the things that we're going to do. And between now and the next board meeting, we'll circulate these things. And like I said, you'll ask more questions and hopefully we'll have the answers.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything now?
Let me open it to the pub. Did you want to go first, or can I have public comment if there's any on Zoom? Oh, we do have Lars.
All right, good afternoon, Board. Lars Ewing, Public Services Director and Interim Public Works Director. Appreciate the presentation. Looking forward to getting my laundry list of questions answered. I came with many, and I added to that. So look forward to the meeting that we're going to have immediately following this. I would like to just voice some of those now so that we can ensure that your board is aware of at least what I've identified to begin with. First off, there was reference to the Public Works Director, and maybe that's lowercase Public Works. My point in saying that is we need to ensure that it's not just Public Works, but Public Services. Obviously, I'm in that role, so that's great. But water, wastewater, that's special district. So it's not just inviting the Public Works Director. We need to ensure that we're inviting many different players that would be involved with public infrastructure. There was mention made of roads, drainage, parks, water, wastewater, lighting comes to mind. Lighting districts that may be under special districts may not be. I don't know. A lot of questions there, but we need to bring the right players to the table. Other questions it would be good to get. If we're not reinventing the wheel, it seems like there's, I think it was a number of 47 that has been done. So the implication there is that there is another county or local jurisdictions that have gone through this, and I would like to talk to them. What are they? What are they seeing? What are they going through? So I think that's a request to the group behind me. Also, mention of the public infrastructure when it's built being handed over to the government agency, the government entity. I presume that is the county. There's been a lot of discussion of JPAs and a variety of different entities. So I would like to ensure that who is the entity, the government entity that receives it. Just confirmation there. Also, when the public infrastructure is built, that's one thing. Ongoing maintenance is another. There was reference to that being covered, I think, through administrative costs, or at least the ongoing revenue that's generated through this whole process. But who actually completes that work? Is the money transferred to the government entity, the county, and then the county is responsible to do that maintenance? In which case, who establishes the cost of doing that work. Obviously, there's a cost of doing it privately. There's a cost of doing it publicly, and I want to make sure that that the county, at least on the public works and public services side, is included in that. Also, administrative review. We've talked about the actual construction and maintenance, but prior to that, there's a lot of administrative review, plan reviews, construction inspection, surveyor costs that basically extends beyond the development review that has occurred up to this point that community development has been involved in, and I expect has received payment through development fees. But how does that administrative review? Would we be reimbursed? Would county staff, engineering technicians, engineers, surveyors, would they be reimbursed for their time to ensure that the infrastructure does in fact meet county standards on the design side and meet them when they are actually constructed? And then lastly, there was mention of park development. I haven't seen any of the plans for this, so I presume that it would, in fact, meet the requirements that the county has in place for Quimby Park improvement fees, or at least the provision of park facilities to meet the needs of that community. But and it may be that review has gone through my office years ago. I understand this goes back in time, but I would just want to double check that. So that kind of gets a few of the questions out there that I think are worth putting out there for the public and for you as a board. But I do look forward to communicating with through Ben and with the group behind me. So thank you.
Thank you, Lars. All right. I think there's no other public comment, so I'll close it. And Supervisor Sabatier, and then I seen you, Supervisor Owen.
Yeah, just I guess I'll bring it down to two questions. One, there was a talk about you don't have a default in your background, but what is our liability if there is a default on our end, just to at least understand the potential worst case scenario?
So if there's a default in the payment of special taxes, or a default on the bonds is attributable to people not paying their special taxes, whether it's the developer or homeowners and so forth. And so since the county is not the issuer of the debt, it's CSCDA. CSCDA will covenant to existing bond owners that it will pursue foreclosure proceedings against any property that defaults on its special taxes. And eventually there'll be foreclosure sales to try to collect those special taxes. At the end of the day, the bonds that are issued are not a debt or a liability of Lake County. It's an obligation of CSCDA that is payable solely from the special taxes. And that's clearly disclosed to investors and understood in the marketplace.
Okay. And then thank you for that. Just a comment, just to make sure I understand and making it available for the public. One of the goals is to build out this great investment in the Butts Canyon Road area and eventually sell some of those properties to homeowners. Like you said, the homeowners would continue to pay this special tax. I know that there was a vote before. Do they still have the ability to protest when they get there? Is that all done and it's
done?
It's
done.
I just wanted to make sure on that. Yeah. And then my last question is, the bond is obviously so you can get upfront capital, so you can get the work done that you want to get done within the public right away and things like that. I know Director Ewing spoke to it, but it's been on my mind about continued maintenance. That to me seems more like an assessment district than what we've been talking about for a bond. Will there be a continued assessment district, or does this bond have perpetuity so that there will be continuous, what's the timeline in order for us to ensure that we always have this incoming revenue to do the maintenance? That
is a great question. And so that, I think, just to say bluntly, is a business deal for the county and the developer to sort out on the transaction. The bonds will have a term of 30 years. They might be issued in a couple different series over time. There is the ability to levy and collect special taxes for services to pay for maintenance in perpetuity. And so a lot of services CFDs in the state do have that ability to levy special taxes for an extended period of time to pay for road maintenance, storm drain removal, debris removal, all that sort of stuff, and public safety and other aspects of it.
We talked about that during the approval of the project as well. So To be continued.
Supervisor Owen?
Yes. Now, my understanding or my thought process was that much of this would be handled much like the Community Service District at Hidden Valley, where you guys would be building your own water systems and sewer systems, but they have to come into our standards. Is that correct? Okay, but you guys will actually be forming your own district to be able to maintain and to all but certain aspects, but a lot of it that's because you'll have, it'll be gated in many aspects of it. Is that correct?
Yeah, some of it will be private. The private will be paid for with private funds, not with bond monies. The bond monies must be used, 95% of those dollars must be used for public facilities in order to keep the tax exemption and get the lower interest rate, which gives us the ability to raise more proceeds up front and then draw from that. And there's no risk in terms of the county getting infrastructure that has not been properly inspected.
Sure.
And so there's always that step that the developer builds it and they build it to standards. If it doesn't meet those standards, the county won't accept it. And it will make the developer go back and correct it. I think from the perspective of maintenance taxes, we can structure maintenance taxes into the CFD and allow it to be collected each year to keep whatever we build. My grandfather always told me, Lou, don't buy what you want, buy what you're willing to maintain. And that's kind of where we are. We have to build something that's going to be up to a standard that will allow us to be able to sell to people who see that it's well maintained. When the infrastructure is over, the infrastructure financing portion of the bonds is done, we still have a tax there. And that tax can be collected for maintenance in perpetuity, which is, I think, what your point, Supervisor, was. And so we follow that paradigm here. But we can build, that's why Susan Goodwin is hired, because she is the one who actually puts a very technical formula together, which is recorded, and it has a maintenance portion, it has the developed, undeveloped taxes, the kind of uses, and then how the property is going to be taxed.
Okay, so I think what I was trying to reach for is obviously behind the gate, you guys will be taken care of completely. The portion that is going to be open to the public, are you going to be taxing to maintain that, or are you expecting the county to take over the responsibilities for that?
No, we.
That's what I was. That was my original thought.
Right. We do everything, and that's really the most important message I can leave you with today, is there's no liability for you. And our job, sports analogy, I'm a guy, probably not PC today, but the quarterback that we're protecting here is really this project, its ability to maintain and build and maintain these improvements, and then create a long-term legacy and allow people to see the value so they want to buy it.
Sure, and that was my original take from it, and I just wanted to clarify.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Do we have direction? Is there anything else to add, or Ben?
This is just a workshop, so the recommendation is to reconvene on December 9th to begin the process and adopt the resolution then.
All right. That's what it will be then. That's the direction I think we have. So we'll go from there.